Okay, welcome back again to Kehilas Ner Avram, beautiful Shari Chesed Yerushalayim, trying to figure out some Avodah in the Parsha. So, the main characters in Toldos are Yaakov and Eisav. This we find, and we especially focus on it because in Chazal's kind of family tree of the world, so Rome, Edom, descends from Eisav, and we're viewed as still being in the Roman Empire or battling with the Roman exile, the Roman Golos, so to speak, because, and this Ramban already explained, and others, that the Romans took on Christianity before the Roman Empire fell, and through that they spread Christianity through the world, and with that it shaped kind of the anti-Semitism that permeates so many aspects of the Western and Eastern world, okay, because Christianity did go there so far. This isn't meaning as something against any particular Christian. There were Gedolei Yisrael who had good relationships with particular Christians, sometimes even priests, and they used that for the benefit of Am Yisrael. But the world which is shaped, which creates especially that mystery of anti-Semitism that's so hard to figure out, that it's there, comes from this opposition of Eisav. And the so to speak, the final battle isn't laid out here in the Torah, but in what we find in these psukim, we do find the keys for what's supposed to be. Okay, first of all, it's just a fascinating topic that you see in a variety of midrashim that Eisav could have had a chance. In other words, we have to realize Eisav was truly a twin brother of Yaakov. Eisav was truly a son of Yitzchak and Rivka. Now people will ask, it says in the womb already, Eisav wanted to do bad things and Yaakov wanted to do good things. But I saw the Gedalio brings down like that just having a tendency to do bad things doesn't make you bad. That means that your avodah in life is particularly fighting against those tendencies. Sur meira. And a person who has the tendency toward good has a lot of work to do also, to do good in the right way, to share his good with others, not to become arrogant. So both Yaakov and Eisav, they could have even been partners. Right? According to that.
Yitzchak wanted them to be
partners. Correct. He saw that potential. I saw Moshe Shapira explained that's the puzzling Chazal that says that Eisav's head is buried in the Ma'aras HaMachpelah. Mm-hmm. The head meaning the beginning of Eisav. Right, the initial, the ideal Eisav, what he could have been, right, the starting point was good. And we find the strange blip in history where that comes out again. Because Rashi brings down when Rivka had these troubling phenomena going on inside, so she was told, Shnei goyim bevitnech, there are two nations in your stomach. Just a clever line that was once Shlomo Freifeld's Zatzal came into it's Talmidim's Purim Mesiba, and there's some empty bottles on the table. He says, now I know what it means, Shnei Goyim Bebitnech. You have Jack Daniels and Johnny Walker in your stomach. So, Jack and Johnny. So Shnei Goyim Bevitnech, so Rashi explains, Shnei Goyim Bevitnech, two mighty ones are in your womb. These are Rebbe and Antoninus. So this was Rabbi Huda Nasi, the one who formulated the Mishnah, and Antoninus, who was the Roman ruler in Eretz Yisrael at the time. And you see throughout Chazal all these stories that Antoninus not only studied and asked questions of Rebbe, but he subjugated himself to Rebbe.
He bent down
right.
And had Rebbe step on him like a footstool to get into bed.
Yeah.
Right,
and to get over puddles and all these things. So that picture, in other words, that really could be the tikkun of Eisav, and that helped the Mishnah happening. That's a picture, a blip of that ideal, perhaps what could have been. But now we come to the part of the brachas and Eisav's cry. Okay, many people feel moved by it. In other words, Eisav comes and he says to his father, right, what's happening? He says, Bo achicha b'mirma v'yikach birchasecha. Right, your brother came in a tricky manner, and he took your bracha. And Kishma Eisav, right, and Yaakov Avinu affirms it. He says, V'avarcheu gam baruch yeh. We say that's where he affirms the brachas that they really do belong to Yaakov. Kishmo Eisav is divrei vayitzak tzaka gedola umara ad ma'od. He gave a cry that was great and extremely bitter. And he said to his father, Barcheni gam ani avi. Give me a bracha as well. Vayomer bar chicha b'mirma vayikach b'chasecha. He took it. Vayomer hachi kara shmo Yaakov. Right, this he called him Yaakov. He tricked me. And he said, Halo atzalta li bracha. Didn't you leave me a bracha? And then Yaakov gives him the bracha. Right? Yeah, it does seem. And
but this was because he was listening to his mother.
Correct. Right. In other words, that was definitely meant to be. When they talk about this, it's a big topic, the idea of how could Yaakov, who represents the midah of emes, do something that seems like a swindle. Rav Dessler tries to say that if something would come out that is not in tune with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plans, so that's not viewed as a lie. In other words, if a Russia is going to be getting great power to use for evil things, and a person uses subterfuge to get that away from him and get it into the hands of the righteous, so he said that actually is an act of truth as opposed to an act of falsehood. But there are many, many things about it. But this cry of Eisav was real, right? Which is interesting, and it affected our history. It says in the Ton of Devel Yo, it says, B'scharo shel Eisav, shahayam boche u'masanech b'shosh birech Yitzchak es Yaakov Avinu, right? It says that his kingdom, which had the power to destroy the Beis Hamikdash, really got its power from that cry that he cried when he saw that Yitzchak gave the brachos to Yaakov and not to him. Okay, it's Chazal say, right, in the Medrash Tanchuma, Rabbi Lazar Omer says, Shalosh demos hizil Eisav harasha. 3 tears Eisav poured out at that time. Echad meino shel yamin, one from his right eye, one from his left eye. The third stayed in the eye and didn't come down. Okay, and it's
Which eye?
oh, that doesn't say. It's interesting, unless maybe it was pulled in both. And Am Yisrael complained. It says in the Medrash Tilim, Ribono Shalom, B'schus shalosh demos shaharid. Here it talks about 3 even coming down. Hishlatato misofa olam vad sofa. You gave Eisav rule over the entire world. Natato l'shalva b'olam hazeh. You let him have a peaceful existence in this world. Right? Kshetova liros el bonenu v'nishboch nafshenu al achas kama v'kama. Look at what we've been doing, what we've suffered, the insult we've suffered, our self-sacrifice for you. So Eisav dropped a few tears, and he's had this mighty empire and this power over us. The Zohar Kodesh, right? These are things brought down by the Talmud Rebbe, these midrashim. Am Rabbi Yitzchak, Perkana di Yisrael lo talya ela bebechi. And therefore, the redemption of Am Yisrael depends on crying, on tears. Kadishtalmun v'yichlun b'chi demos debocha Eisav kamei. When the tears of Eisav will be finished, right? Then v'inun domin achisu liyisrael b'galuse, right? And those tears put us into galus. It says kivan the yichlun inun domin b'chiyad Yisrael. But if they can be somewhat erased by the tears of Am Yisrael, then we'll be redeemed from our galus. Okay, so there's the Arvei Nachal was a great Hasidic Rav, posek and commentator. Sefer Arvei Nachal. He moved from Europe to Tzfat, and he says, how can it be? Am Yisrael cried so much over history. How can it be that we didn't overcome those couple of tears from Eisav? Right? Oceans of tears we've done. So he explained like this. He says, there's a principle in halacha that min b'mino eno batel. Okay? In other words, if I have some non-kosher milk and it falls into kosher milk, so I can't say, okay, 1 in 60 is batel, if it gets subsumed in the greater amount of kosher. Like if you had milk falling into chicken soup, if it was less than 1 in 60, so the milk is batel, it's subsumed into the chicken soup. Min b'mino, if it's the same thing, you can't do because there's nothing to, so to speak, cancel it out because it's the same thing. So it's going to continue on existing. There's no opposing taste to swamp it out. So he says, if our tears are the same as Eisav's tears, right? Meaning Eisav's tears were there because he wanted a good life. He felt that, Yitzchak had the ability to bless him, to give him success and good life and all these things. He says, if we're crying about what we don't have in terms of that Eisav type of good life, then our tears are the same as his, and it can't do the work. If we're crying about the Shekhinah being in Golus, the world not going according to the plan that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted and all these things, then we could cancel those tears out. But he says another fascinating thing. This is the Toldos Rebbe added on. He says you have to realize that this was something that came difficult to Eisav. In other words, Eisav on one hand kind of, blew his nose on the whole world of Yitzchak and the inheritance. But I don't want to be the inheritor of Yitzchak. Right? This didn't mean who was going to get Yitzchak's golf clubs. This meant who was going to have to be in charge of this spiritual avoda. He says, I don't want it. I don't need it. And he was involved in things that went against everything that Avram and Yitzchak were teaching. But, right, he did somehow fight within himself. There was something that said that which comes from my father Yitzchak is powerful. That which comes from Yitzchak, he's a tzaddik. There's something there. And that was what brought that cry out. And that's why it was powerful. There was something genuine in there. I saw a story about one of the Belzer Rebbe's. He'd gone to a doctor with one of his sons, and the doctor was a very non-observant Jew. But when he was leaving, the doctor said, Rebbe, could you give me a blessing? Right? And he told his son, he said, Mashiach's going to be able to take that man too. He explained, he said his father once heard people saying, if it's going to be Mashiach in this generation, it's going to be this Belzer Rebbe. He said, I'm not Mashiach, and I don't want to be Mashiach. He said, very hard job. He says, because Mashiach has to bring every Jew back, but every Jew needs at least some kind of little spark of connection in order for Mashiach to bring him back. And he's going to have to awaken that in everyone. He says, but that's an example of the spark. A Jew who at least feels when he meets a holy Jew, he says, I feel your blessing's worth something. That's already a connection. It's kind of like we said last week about Eliezer and meeting someone like that. If a person has that feeling, right, and that's why it's so important. V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha, that it says, that means also that the name of Hashem should be beloved through you, right? That you help people connect to that. Okay, now, the strange part at the end of the bracha, when he finally gives Eisav a bracha, he says, Al charbecha tichya, you will live on your sword. V'esachicha ta'avod, you will serve your brother. V'aya kasher tarid uparakta ulo me'al tzavarecha. Now this word tarid is very interesting. Most Mepharshim explain it like that you will be able to cry out and complain justifiably. Then you will throw off Yaakov's yoke from your shoulders. How does he have a just complaint? So Rashi brings, if Am Yisrael stop keeping the Torah as they should, now Eisav says, wait a second. This whole blessing to Yaakov was predicated on something, right? If he's acting like me, why should I be subservient? And that works. And that's true.
That's where a lot of the sinah comes from. When we try to act like the Goyim, so then they
Correct.
do Havdalah on us.
That's right. It gives the power to that. So it's this creates the relationship that Chazal phrased as Kshezeh kam zeh nofel. The relationship between Yaakov and Eisav is always, if one is up, one is down. One is down, one is up, like a seesaw. And
The Jews have very rarely been up, Rabbi.
this is true. This is true, right? Like I saw one of the Mepharshim pointed out that there was a time when Edom originally, which was the nation of Eisav, so they were subservient to Am Yisrael. But then when the kings of Am Yisrael started misbehaving, they broke free and they had it. But there's a fascinating parish that's kedai to hear. I heard this from Moshe Shapira, and then I copied the source. The Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Lutzato, wrote the Mesilas Yesharim and many other things. Had a famous Talmud called Rav Moshe David Valley. He wrote a very big set on Svarim Or Olam, and he says on this question, on this pasuk, Esachicha tavod, you will serve your brother. What does that mean that Eisav will serve Yaakov? When did Eisav serve Yaakov? Right? It doesn't seem to do. So he says like this. He says, Gam inyan gadol nirmaz b'mashe kosu v'esachicha tava. There's something very big which is hinted to here. V'usha afilu ba'avdos ha'elokus. What that means is, in the religion of Eisav, yivcharu ha'adomim likach lagem le'eloha oso ish shabo mizer Yisrael. Avoda doesn't necessarily mean washing your car and mowing your lawn. Avoda, mean like spiritual worship. Esachicha tavod, you will worship your brother, meaning you will worship a Jew. Who the Christians worship? Who do they have nailed up there on all the little things? Yazel, a Jew. It's a very fascinating thing, right? He says, this is something that I was taught by my father. And, this was what they took. Now, Moshe Shapira said that this connection is actually what powers the one up and one down type of relationship with Am Yisrael and Edom. Meaning, there has to be a connection when you have this type of relationship. Like sometimes you find it with faucets of water, right? I turned on the water, I've got a lot of water, and then suddenly it's dribbling down. Why? Because somebody else turned on the other faucet, and it's coming out of there. But that's because we're both drawing from the same source. Okay, and my faucet taps into it, and his faucet taps into it. So here he says this link of a Jew in the center of Christianity gives the nation of Eisav their link into us, so that when we aren't as we should be, they draw their power from us. That's what's called ula'om mila'om ye'ematz. One nation will become stronger from the other. I forget, there's a fancy name for it. I don't know if it's symbiotic, some kind of a relationship like that. And this is the roots of this fascinating Gemara in Maseches Avodas that I heard it taught by Rav Moshe Shapira. He brought it down often. So I'll just read it quickly, and it explains a lot about our world. It's talking about different holidays that different religions had and such. And it says the following. 1 second. Yeah. It said, Od zois hoisa beromi, od acheres yeshlem beromi. Here was another holiday in Rome. Now, the things we're going to be reading here, the Maharal says, don't focus on the literalness of them so much, but what they represent. Achas l'shivim shona. Once,
Climbing on the back.
yeah. The hole and the limping. Once every 70 years, mavim adam sholim. You bring a very strong, healthy man, umarkivin osal adam chiger, and you put him to ride, like on the shoulders or piggyback of a man who's crippled, who's limping. Malbishi noso bigdei adam harishon. The rider, they put on him the clothes of adam harishon, right? Which, according to Chazal's history of it, went to Nimrod, and then Eisav killed Nimrod and took those clothes. Umanichin lo berosho karkafilo sharabi Yishmael kohen gadol. You put on the face of that man, on his head, the disembodied skull, the skin of the face of Rabbi Yishmael Kohen Gadol. It was peeled off, right? And the Chazal said that the daughter of the Caesar, when she saw him, he was beautiful, she wanted him to be saved, said, I can't do that, so she said, take his face off. Rashi says a fascinating thing that sounds spooky, right? He says, V'chantu ba'afar simon, and they saved it in this shemen afar simon, they preserved it, shetei mekuyemes, v'lo yishtana, and it shouldn't change. V'adayin munach beginzei Romi, and it's still in the treasure houses of Rome. Okay, he says, and they put this special jewel around his neck, and they decorate the streets, and they announce this following interesting chant, Sach Kiri Plaster. The numbers, right, the dates which are given for the end are fake. There's nothing to them. Achva de Marona Zaifana. The brother of our master was a counterfeiter. Right, etc. And then they say, Maya Hani l'Rama b'Rama. What did the counterfeiter benefit from his counterfeiting? The Zaifana b'Zaifanuse, or the tricker from the tricker and the counterfeiter. And in other words, what's this represent? The limping man represents Yaakov. The whole strong man represents Eisav. Rome is reveling in its dominance in the world, in its success. Yaakov and his descendants are limping, and they're riding on top of them. Now, the things that they have the clothes of Adam HaRishon. So those were supposed to give a person power over like all animals in the world. You could hunt anything you wanted. That represents rule and power in this world. The face of Rabbi Yishmael represents something more sinister and subtle. This is what Moshe said, that even spiritual beauty was stolen from Am Yisrael. Sometimes people look at Christian things and they're so drawn to its beauty, right? Churches or the music or the artwork or different things like that. So it's stolen. In other words, that spiritual beauty, so to speak, is something that was taken from us. And the announcement is there is nothing happened. Yaakov went to all that trouble to get those blessings, and he's a loser. And we're riding on him. And that all goes until the final thing that they say. Vailadein kad yokum dein. But woe to this one when that one rises up. Meaning, the relationship of a rider on something that he's riding has a danger in it. If that which you're riding rises up, you fall. And that was the end of it, meaning deep inside the consciousness of Rome, the consciousness of that Western world that was created by Christianity, is the sense that when the Jew rises, so then that will fall. Now, Rav Moshe emphasized, the Jew rises doesn't mean an armed uprising, not at all. Right? We don't concern ourselves even in the concept of how we make, right, this Christian empire fall. That's not. We focus only on Kshizeh Kam. We simply have to rise up, meaning become ourselves, to remember ourselves. That was what it said. V'hoya kasher torid. If Eisav is not able to complain and say, "Look at these guys," right? Why should they get the blessing, right? But if we actually become those people that seem fitting for it, right, descendants of Yaakov, so then it disappears like smoke, right? That's the key. And it goes on and on and on, thousands of years, and we have to see and to remember that key. I just finished with a beautiful thing I saw. There's a Sefer Likuti Mariach. He was a Rav in Europe in a town, what was it called again? Rachov, a town in Rachov. He said like this, he said, why should it be fair that when Yaakov goes down, Eisav can suddenly go up and throw off the yoke and take power? You can't expect Jews to be angels, especially if they're in exile. And it's hard. They got sorrows. They got to make money. They got to have things, So why should that be fair? So he says, you're right. He says, the whole thing is, it says, V'hoya im torid. V'hoya, say Chazal, is a lashon of happiness. Meaning, if you see Jews that are happy to get rid of their Judaism, then we're in trouble. If you see a Jew who would like to do more, who would hope to do more, he can't. It's hard for him. He struggles, he falls. That doesn't give Eisav power over you. That's us. That's who we are. But if Eisav can create a climate in which a person rejoices to abandon Judaism, then that's hard. And we shouldn't be pointing the finger, those assimilated, etc. That can be us in whatever aspect of our own that we abandon Judaism in what we have to, right? These are the people that are most responsible. And with that, he's echoing what the Sforno said by Cheta Egel. Cheta Egel, it says, Moshe came down, he saw the music and the dancing, and then he broke the luchos. Said the Sforno, okay, if he heard things are going bad, right, Hashem told him, your people have sinned before he went down, so why not smash the luchos right then? No, there's hope. But if you see, he says, if they would have been serving the Egel, okay, bring the luchos, we'll deal with it, we'll fix it up. If they're singing and dancing, delighted in the fact that they've gone over to something else, he said, then we need a stronger medicine, and they're no longer worthy of the luchos. So that's the goal, and it's very important to create the environment that a Jew should be happy to be Jewish, right? The more that we can do that it's something which is beautiful and joyful, so then that prevents a person from feeling that joy of leaving. If we create a world of Judaism that's so unpleasant that a person feels good, right, to escape it, so then that's our fault, right? And this is something that we have to try to work on, hopefully, and then it will be Shazeh Kam Zenofel. You're very welcome. Thank you all. The Kotzker Rebbe said a very powerful thing. He said, Imagine like you're a fly on the wall. He didn't say this, I said that, but you're watching Yaakov. He's dressed up in Esav's clothes, right? He has these hairy goat skins on his arms, so it'll be hairy. He's saying, Anochi Eisav b'chorecha, I am Eisav your b'chor, and he's getting the brachas then. He said, why did Yaakov need the brachas so badly? Yaakov was a tzaddik. You know that Hashem's going to take care of a tzaddik. Why was Rivka so uptight? He said, because he understood that in future history there would be a Jew who would be so far from his Judaism, he would almost look like Eisav. He would almost believe he is Eisav. He wanted him to get the bracha. He said, that Jew's going to need the bracha. And that's why he came in that guise.